The Equestrian Broadcasting System and its affiliates presents Brook the Book Horse and the Bon Bon Theatre Company on the air in the adventures of Shercolt Holmes by Sir Canter Doyle. It was the 910th year of Celestia's reign when I earned my doctorate of medicine from West Manhattan University. After completing my studies, I was dispatched with the Royal Guard as an army doctor. The campaign through Equestria was brought to many honors, but soon the Griffin War began. The fighting between Griffinstone and Equestria began in True in the year 915, but I was removed from the trenches in 914, after taking a rogue enchantment from a unicorn comrade of mine. Accidentally, of course, but it shattered the bone in my right foreleg, leaving me permanently out of commission. I recovered for 6 months, and the bone was nearly healed when I was struck down with severe illness called mud fever, which primarily affects the skin, and was caused by my prolonged stay in the trenches and taking hold of my health because of the numerous surgeries I had to endure. My health irreparably ruined, I was honorably retired with a penchant of 100 bits. After nearly a year, I recovered, but my health was still critically fragile and my nerves had suffered greatly as well. I retired to Canterlot, my childhood home, thinking that I could get lost completely in the large city and forget the war that was then still raging on.
Trotson! Dr. von Trotson, is that you?
Stanherd, old man, you are a sight for sore eyes.
Whatever have you been doing with yourself? Your coat is faded.
I've been in Griffinstone. I was just retired from Her Highness's Royal Guard.
You were a guard?
My word, no. I was a doctor for the guard.
Sweet Celestia. Were you in the trenches?
I'd rather not discuss it, in all honesty.
Right, of course. Well, what are you up to now?
Looking for an apartment, trying to solve the problem of whether or not it's possible to get a good room for less than 100 bits.
That's strange.
What is?
Well, you are the second pony to say those exact words to me today.
Oh? Who was the first?
A student who was working at the chemical laboratory in Canterlot General. He was telling me today that he'd found the perfect apartment, but couldn't find a stallion who would go halves with him.
Luna's garters! If he needs someone to share the rooms and half the bits, I am his stallion. With my nerves, I would prefer that to living alone.
Well, you don't know Mr. Holmes yet. You may not prefer him to loneliness.
Is there something against him?
I didn't say that. He's just queer. He's a decent stallion.
If he's studying in the hospital, then it's safe to assume he's a medical student.
Yeah, I don't think so. He's a first-class chemist, and he's a genius of anatomy. But as far as I know, he's never taken any medical courses. He's not studying for any particular degree, I don't think. But he is brilliant.
You've never asked him what he's going in for?
It's impossible to get him to give you any information at all, but he can read ponies like books.
I'd like to meet him. I'd like to lodge with some pony studious and quiet. I'm not well enough yet for any excitement.
He's sure to be at the lab. He either avoids the place for weeks, or stays there morning, afternoon, and night for weeks. Come on.
I must say, this place has changed tremendously since I was last here.
Yes, they've done some renovating. The lab is right through this door, but please, don't be alarmed at whatever he's doing.
You know, Stanherd, the way you talk about him sounds like you were trying to pawn him off on some pony else. What's so bad about him?
He's a very scientific pony, but sometimes it borders on cold-bloodedness. I can imagine him slipping a friend a new drug to test on him. Not out of malevolence, you see, but just out of a spirit of discovery, to have an accurate idea of its effects. Though, if I'm being fair to him, I think he's just as likely to take it himself with the same level of excitement. He has a passion for definite and exact knowledge.
Well, he's passionate then. But the quest for knowledge is admirable enough.
Yes, but it can go too far. The other day I saw him. He was boxing with the corpses.
Boxing? With corpses? corpses.
Beating them to see how long after death bruises can be inflicted on a pony.
Are you certain he's not a medical student?
He's not, but heaven knows what his profession will be. Anyway, you must form your own impression of him. Are you ready?
With that introduction? Certainly.
Shercolt, are ye busy?
Yes! I've done it! Stanherd, I'm glad you were here to see it. I've done it!
Another scientific breakthrough, I trust.
I've created a serum that will detect the hemoglobin in blood, and nothing else. This will redefine how we work.
Dr. Trotson? Mr. Shercolt Holmes.
Oh, of course. You brought a guest, and a veteran at that. Where are my manners? I have the greatest of respect for our guard and their doctors. Pleasure to meet you. How was your journey back from Griffinstone?
How did you know that I had been in Griffinstone?
Never mind. The hemoglobin is what we need to focus on. I'm sure as a doctor you understand the significance.
Well, it is interesting, but I'm unsure how it would benefit medical work.
It's highly practical, medical, legal work. This test will allow us to check for bloodstains on ponies' coats when they are suspected of murder, or in carpets after they've been cleaned. It's brilliant.
Mr. Holmes, your hoof is bandaged. Do you test this using your own blood?
Why, of course. I wouldn't ask Stanherd here to volunteer.
Thanks, Celestia.
The old methods of blood detection spells only work if the blood is a few hours old. But with this, we can test materials even weeks later. I'm certain if we'd discovered this earlier, many ponies would have been executed for their crimes. So many cases hinge on that. A pony's clothes are examined, and we find brownish stains on them. Perhaps it's dry blood, but then again, it could be mud or fruit or rust. But now we can test it reliably, with the Shercolt Holmes test.
Well, congratulations, Mr. Holmes. It will be an honor to share a room with a pony who has changed criminal science forever.
Ah, that's why you're here. Well, in that case, it truly is a pleasure. And I apologize for shaking your hoof with my left, because of my cut. I know that it was your left foreleg that was injured.
Now, how would you know that, Mr. Holmes?
Later. I have my eye on a room in Baker Street, downtown. I smoke, is that all right with you?
I smoke cigars.
Excellent, I smoke pipes. I have many chemicals and often run experiments. Let me see. What else might annoy you? I get depressed, often, and barely speak. I also read ferociously and leave books scattered around all over the place. I'm extremely messy. What are your shortcomings? I think it best for two ponies to know the worst of each other if they are going to share a home.
Well, I don't like arguments and loud noises because of my nerves. I am up and down all night, I eat far too much, and I've been extremely lazy since getting back from the war.
Oh, would you include violin playing as a loud noise?
A well-played violin is a treat for Celestia herself. A badly played one deserves banishment.
Then we shall get along fine. I'll meet you tomorrow at noon to settle everything. The address is 221B Baker Street. I'll see you there, my dear doctor.
We met the next day and went to inspect the rooms at Baker Street. The floor for rent held 2 comfortable bedrooms and a large living room with 3 large mismatching chairs and a warm fireplace. There were many empty bookshelves, which made my companion smile, seemingly dreaming of the possibilities. We immediately settled on the terms, and with both of us paying 55 bits a month, the apartment became our new home. We spent several days crowding our possessions into the place and settling boundaries. I would take the writing desk in front of one of the 3 large windows, while Mr. Holmes would take the large reading desk as a chemistry table. The larger of the 3 chairs he took, as I preferred the medium one with more support. We began life together, breakfasting and dining around the small table in our living room, and generally spending most of our time together in silence, except for a few kindly words such as,
Doctor, will you pass me that parchment, please?
or,
Doctor, please have the fire going when I get back. There's a good chap.
all was quiet and well. Holmes was not a typical pony to live with at all. He was set in his ways, but very personable, if a little quiet. He would go to bed at 10 every night and rise at 6 every morning. Sometimes he would spend his days at the lab, and other days he would walk Canterlot, going from the highest class end of town to the very lowest slum. Some days he would sit at his chemical table for hours, swirling tubes and glasses and mixing chemicals. Nothing could stop him most days. Other days he would spend the whole day on the sofa, staring off into the fireplace, doing nothing, saying nothing, barely eating. On those occasions I often wondered if he was addicted to some form of narcotic that left him in such a state. But the rest of his life was far too well-tempered and clean for such a suspicion to take me very far. Perhaps I am simply a busybody, as I had little purpose in life, a young stallion, crippled, discharged from battle, and without a friend in the world. But I must admit, this pony left me terribly curious.
How was your egg, Doctor? Mrs. Button asked me how you take yours, and I hadn't the slightest idea.
Over medium, preferably, but this is fine.
Ah. Well, Doctor, would it greatly bother you if I were to ask for the use of the sitting room for an hour? I apologize for the inconvenience, but you see, I have a client coming to see me this afternoon, and they expect me to keep their words in the strictest confidence.
Certainly. Just tell me when they arrive, and I will just read in my room for a while.
Thank you so much, my dear Doctor. Again, I apologize for the inconvenience.
It is no trouble at all. My word, Mr. Holmes, have you read this article in the paper?
Yes, I have.
From a drop of water, a logician could infer the possibility of an ocean without having seen one. So our life is a great chain, the nature of which is known whenever we are shown a single link of it.
Don't you find that intriguing?
I think his deductions are a little far-fetched. The writer claims that from a stallion's expression, a twitch of a muscle, or a glance of an eye, you can tell his innermost thoughts. I think it's nonsense. I'd bet 1,000 bits he couldn't guess the jobs of everyone on that train, like he claims to be able to.
You'd lose your money. I wrote that article myself.
You wrote it? Well, I didn't mean to sound insulting.
No, I understand. Many ponies think I'm magic or a fraudster. I'm used to that.
Well, I don't think... Isn't it rather a grand leap of logic to think you can guess a pony's job based on their horseshoes?
No, in fact, I depend on my ability to do just that in my work.
And what is your work? I've been wondering for weeks.
I am a consulting detective. When the detectives of the Canterlot police force get stuck, they come to me, and I give them a nudge in the right direction, for a fee, of course.
You mean ponies who have seen every detail of a criminal case, can't figure it out? But you can do so from the comfort of your armchair.
Most of the time. Though there are some occasions I get a case of interest and go off to investigate it. That's why I often wander the city.
So then, why have you never used those skills on me?
I did when we first met, remember? I told you that you had just come back from Griffinstone and that your leg had been injured.
You must have been told by some pony.
Would you like to know how I knew?
Yes.
You wear your hair brushed down, but you have the distinct mane of a guard. Your fetlocks aren't groomed too finely, so I know that you are not a guard at the castle. Your coat looks merely faded, but a trained eye can tell that your coat has been stained, suggesting the characteristic grey sedimentary dirt of Griffinstone, which, when wet, has the distinct habit of bleaching the fur of one's coat. That led me to presume that you had been in the trenches and have been injured and sent home. This was confirmed by the fact that you hold your left front leg in a slightly awkward position. You do this to hide your limp. Therefore, you are a soldier sent home because of an injury. And since the only scarring visible is clearly surgical, I imagine it was friendly fire from a unicorn.
That's amazing. But you know I was a doctor.
Stanhope introduced you as Doctor Trotson.
Right, of course. Well, when you spell it all out, it sounds simple enough.
It is all simple, my doctor. But you don't have to take my word for it. Come over here and look out the window.
That old stallion over there, with the blue envelope, looking at the house numbers.
You mean the retired sergeant of the guard?
Well, of course you can make willy-nilly guesses when I can't verify it.
He's looking for me to deliver that letter. You can ask him when he comes in.
How do you know he... My word, here he comes.
Mr. Shercolt Holmes, I have a letter for you.
Thank you. Here's your tip.
Excuse me, what is your trade?
Mail pony, of course.
What were you before this?
I was Sergeant of the Guard, sir. I just do this now to supplement my pension check.
How in Equestria did you know that?
What?
That he was retired sergeant?
For the love of... I'm sorry, Doctor. Forgive my impatience. You broke my train of thought. It is this simple. He has the mandatory sideburns worn by the sergeants of the guard in 875. Judging by his age, he would have been in his 30s at the time. Those sideburns have never been fashionable, so I assumed as much from that. His cutie mark being a sergeant's cap confirmed it.
I'll be damned.
I say, my dear doctor, read this. Aloud. I want to see your reaction.
My dear Shercolt Holmes, I would like you to come downtown to assist me with a case. I think it should pique your interest. We found a dead man in an abandoned home. There's no evidence of how he died. There are marks of blood in the room, but he has no wounds on his body. Come any time before 12, and you will find me there. If you cannot come, I will send more details. I would appreciate your opinion greatly. Yours faithfully, Inspector Booksmart.
Inspector Booksmart is a fantastic detective. She and Detective Deus are the treasures of the Canterlot police force. Most detectives these days are so unimaginative and often form conclusions before they have all of the facts. But Booksmart and Deus are highly intelligent mares, if slightly conventional. The fun will come if they are working together. They are extremely jealous of each other. So, are you coming?
You want me to come along?
Only if you're interested and have nothing better to do.
Absolutely. You've barely said a word the whole way here, Mr. Holmes. Don't you have any theories?
I have no information. I can't make bricks without clay, Doctor.
What are you doing now? It's not very orthodox to be crawling around on the ground, Mr. Holmes.
Do you see this?
What?
Carriage marks, but no police carriage. And furthermore, these are the marks of a cab.
Was that important?
Well, it's an abandoned house, according to Booksmart. So who would come here in a cab? Ah, Inspector Booksmart, pleasure to see you.
Mr. Holmes?
This is my... Doctor Trotson.
Pleasure to meet you.
Well, here's the body. Age 35, unicorn male. ID showed it to be Black Spade from Baltimore.
I've never seen anything like it. He looks... angry?
Quite. You are sure there's no wound? Then the blood must belong to some pony else. Probably the murderer.
Any ideas?
The coroner can take him now.
Mr. Holmes, Black Spade had a ring on him. It just fell out. Look.
It's a female unicorn's wedding ring. Was a mare here?
What did you find in his pockets?
It's all here. A watch, a chain, a handkerchief, and a book whose cover page says it's owned by Mr. Earth Stinger. 7 bits and 2 letters.
Letters?
Yes, from the pony called Earth Stinger, the owner of the book. They are both from the Horseshoe Bay Steamship Company near Baltimore. I thought it was clear that he was about to return to Baltimore by ship to make the trip shorter.
Have you inquired about the identity of this Earth Stinger?
We sent some telegrams to Baltimore, yes.
And you didn't ask for any specific points on any of the bizarre circumstances of this case?
No, I asked about Black Spade and for information on this Earth Stinger character.
There are a number of things you could have...
Mr. Holmes, Inspector Booksmart.
Yes, Doctor?
Look at this.
R-A-C-H-E.
Written in blood.
What does it mean?
He must have been trying to write the word Rachel and been disturbed before he could finish. The murderer must have written it. Come now, Holmes. What's so funny?
I'm sorry. I agree that it was written by the other fellow in the room, But let's examine the room properly before we jump to any conclusions. May I? You see this dust?
Yes?
This is cigar ash.
So what?
All right, ma'am. I think I have what I need here.
So, what do you think?
I think I need to speak to the pony who found the body.
Certainly. Constable Bagstand, Mr. Holmes wants to talk to you.
Yes, Inspector?
I would like to hear exactly how you found the body of this stallion.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I was walking the Lunar Gardens district on my beat when I noticed a light on in this home. I knew the street to be abandoned because these are summer homes that aren't typically rented out this time of year. I went to knock, just to check if any pony was home, but the door was open. I went in and found him here.
That was it?
Yes.
There was no one in the building.
No, sir.
Was there any pony in the street?
No pony worth noting.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, there was a drunkard and I told him to scram. He was too drunk to be our pony. He positively reeked of alcohol.
Well, I think I have all I need.
Mr. Holmes, have you no conclusions to offer me?
Oh, I wouldn't dream of stealing the credit from you, Booksmart. You know by now how this works. But I do need to follow a few leads.
Which leads?
I can't say. It may be nothing yet. But may I keep this ring?
If it will help.
Then I'll set you on the right path and follow my own leads. The stallion you are looking for is 4 feet tall, 3.5 feet long, light orange, and has a frizzy grey mane, and he's between 18 and 25 years old. He's poor, or at least he lives a moderately cheap life. He has disproportionately small feet, and has just had his right foreleg's horseshoe replaced. All his horseshoes are cheap athletic shoes. He probably had it replaced this week, so you can ask around the local shoe shops if they have seen a pony of this description. He may have paid with credit. He arrived with a cab and was smoking a Baltimore Secret brand cigar.
I say, that's a lot to go on. But how did he die if there's no wounds?
Poison. He must have been forced to take it.
Forcing someone to take poison would be almost impossible. Who would voluntarily do that?
Suicidal ponies, for one. Oh, and one more thing.
Yes?
The word rock is a word in Germanian for revenge. Don't waste your time on the Rachel theory.
Mr. Holmes, how did you know all that? I know you've proven to me that you can deduce a lot from little trifles, but that's a lot. Can you really be certain?
There's no room for error, Doctor.
So how did you know?
Well, look down at your feet. The hoof prints and the dust around the body. The right foreleg has left a clearer mark than the others, suggesting a new horseshoe. The prints themselves suggest cheap athletic wear, as opposed to the high-class horseshoes of runners. The stallion is walking all the time, probably his trade, but he's definitely not an athlete. His stride is too slow for that. He's young, in his 20s. I know that because while he walks slower, you can see by this puddle here that he has taken an enormous stride to step over it, and resumed walking normally. Most stallions would struggle with that if they were over 50, and he is light on his feet, so he must be young and sprightly.
But the cigar?
I pride myself that I can recognize the ash of 200 different brands of tobacco by smell and color.
That's amazing. But his hair color?
Well, that's simple. I found his hair on the ground. The longer strands are clearly from the mane. I knew the coat and mane color of myself, you, Booksmart, and the 2 constables there, and the dead body, of course, so I could imagine the only remaining pony in the room must be the murderer, and the hair must belong to him.
That's simple enough, but what about Rock?
I think it was a ploy to keep the police busy. It means nothing to this case.
But who would write a Germanian word on the wall if not some pony from St. Germain?
Germanians write their A's differently, my dear doctor. A true Germanian would never make such a mistake.
Then why didn't you tell Booksmart?
If it was meant to keep the force busy, I say we let it do so. That will give us enough time to solve the case properly.
So what's next?
Next, we should make an effort to find this Earthstinger fellow. I believe he is probably our Black Spade's secretary.
Why do you think that?
2 letters, dated 1 day apart. Only a lover or a secretary would keep in touch that closely, and the wording wasn't affectionate at all.
So how can we find Stinger if the force hasn't yet?
Come now, Doctor. We can do better than the Canterlot police force. I have my own secret police. Come with me.
Mr. Holmes, what are we waiting for?
You'll see.
But why can't you tell me? We've been waiting half an hour.
Well, I suspect you'll only have to wait 10 more seconds. Boys, quiet now. Dr. Trotson, I would like you to meet my secret police. I call them the Irregulars.
Nice to meet you, Doc.
Why, Mr. Holmes, these are street beggars.
Well, Doctor, that's a bit harsh. They work very hard for the money I pay them, don't you, boys?
Righto, Mr. Holmes.
For the sake of our housekeeper, though, perhaps, Wiggins, you should come up alone in the future. The poor dear sounds like she's about to have a heart attack. Well, here is your task, gentle colts. I need you to ask around and see if you can find the address of a stallion named Earthstinger. And one more thing. I have written here the description of a stallion. I need you to find him. I believe he is the cabbie who drove our murderer to the crime scene we just left. He probably doesn't even realize what the murderer has done, so don't alarm him. Merely find out his name and bring him to me.
You got it, Mr. Holmes.
Excellent, boys. I knew I could count on you. And here are your bits. Wiggins, you split it up fairly. I shall know if you don't. Poor Mrs. Button.
Luna's garters! How did you find the description of the cab driver?
Child's play. I'll explain later. Now we need only wait.
So, Mr. Holmes, what do you get out of all this?
What do you mean?
Certainly the police pay you, but you must get more out of all this than that.
What more do I need? I like a good mystery.
But you don't seem to even want to take credit.
I've never taken credit in any of my other cases, so no, I won't this time either.
Is that not aggravating?
Doctor, there's something you should understand about me. Without a problem to solve, I feel my existence is wasted. My mind is like an engine whirring away with no fuel. I suppose, in a way, I'm addicted to it. There's so much injustice in the world. We strive toward harmony, of course. The princess's example is always before us, Faust bless her. But there is such discordance, such disharmony. I suppose if I feel I have harmonized it, even a little bit, then who gets the credit doesn't matter. I have enough money to live, and I have done some good, so that when I finally meet my maker, I can tell her that I tried to do some good with the life that she gave me.
I had been through so much that day, and learned a great deal about the mind of my companion. But that night, I learned about his soul. Beneath the cold preciseness of his deductions was a heart that I felt he kept hidden. Why? Who knows, but I felt honoured that I was the pony in whom he confided his true intentions, in a way he would never express to Inspector Booksmart. The next day, I awoke to find Holmes standing over my bed.
Wakey, wakey. We have a visit to make.
Are we certain we are heading for Stinger's home?
Do you see what I see?
Is that a police carriage?
I'm impressed. Booksmart was ahead of the game for once. Thank you, driver.
Holmes, I was just about to send for you.
Congratulations, Inspector.
Have you detained Earthstinger already?
No, I'm afraid there's no reason to detain him now.
The murderer beat us here, Mr. Holmes.
Is this doctor fellow going to be a regular fixture from now on?
Booksmart, have you moved the body?
No, I left it just as we found it, but you won't find much.
Doctor, wait.
What?
Look at the carriage tracks.
A tire slipped on one of the wheels. It will need replacing.
The back left. Interesting.
Now, if we can't find the first cabbie, We can certainly find the second.
Well, we shall see, eh? Once again, no blood. Therefore, he had to be poisoned.
There's less evidence than last time.
I see that. Same hoof prints, no hair, but... Inspector, you don't smile like that for no reason. What have you found?
We were on the ball today, Mr. Holmes. These are what I found. 2 small white pills.
Fascinating.
And they were in a sack together.
Have you had time to test them yet?
No, but we are going to, unless you would like to take it back to your lab.
I would if you wouldn't mind, Booksmart.
What do you think they could be?
I imagine it's probably the poison, but I will need to test to be sure.
Shall we return home?
Yes. In fact, Booksmart, why don't you come along as well to see my conclusions? You seem like you could use a cup of tea.
Well, the constables do seem to have everything under control here.
Excellent. Come along, then.
We returned to Baker Street, and Holmes tested both pills, once we were interrupted by young Wiggins.
Wiggins, my lad. What is it?
We couldn't find the cabbie, sir.
That's fine, Wiggins. I'll tell you what. I do have more to give you that may help your task. I am looking for a cabby who had his back left tire replaced this morning. Find out his name and then request that his agency send him to Baker Street. I shall need a cab, and I specifically want this stallion as a driver. Don't fail me, Wiggins.
I won't let you down, Mr. Holmes.
With that, Wiggins left, and the three of us, myself, Holmes, and Booksmart, sat in the living room for some hours. Eventually, after our housekeeper had brought us all dinner, Booksmart and I began to talk quietly, not wanting to disturb Holmes's work.
Don't think Holmes is your friend, Doctor.
Why wouldn't I think that?
He's a loner. Why do you think he doesn't take credit for his cases? He doesn't like attention. He doesn't like friends. I've invited him to dinner several times, and he always turns me down. He loves his science and his books and his mysteries, but he don't like ponies, Doctor. You seem like a good fellow. Don't set yourself up to get hurt. He's not your friend.
Well,
Interesting. One of these pills is poisonous, while the other is harmless.
what does it mean?
Well, it means that an unexpected fact is still a help, not a hindrance. There are 3 possibilities, but I think we should wait to say anything definite until our killer is at hand.
But how can we catch him, Holmes? You haven't said anything about how we get our hooves on him.
I expect you to arrest him tonight, Booksmart.
You can't be serious.
Come in, Wiggins.
The cab's waiting outside, Mr. Holmes.
I shall need some help with my bags, Wiggins. Please, send the driver up.
Right you are, Mr. Holmes.
If you wouldn't mind, stay quiet for just a moment.
Hello, sir? Hello, sir?
Sir, you are under arrest for the murder of Black Spade and Earthstinger.
Well, I won't fight you. You got me.
It's rare I'm surprised. I must confess, that surprises me.
Come along, then, to the station with you.
Actually, if it's all the same to you, Booksmart, can we take his statement here? I shall rather like to hear it myself.
Very well. Sit down there, you criminal slime.
Sir, what is your name?
My name is Oakseed. I'm from Trox.
Not Baltimore?
I moved there about 10 years ago.
Is this yours?
That's me Penny's ring. Please, may I have it back?
I see no reason you can't. The ring does belong to him, Booksmart.
I suppose if you say it's safe, Mr. Holmes.
Now, Mr. Seed, you've confirmed my suspicion that this was a crime of passion for a mare. What specifically drove you to murder?
Well, mister, it's a long story.
I should warn you that it will be used against you in court, young man.
I won't be going to court. Don't look so worried, Corper. I'm not going to kill myself. I have an aortic aneurysm, which as of yet, magic can't heal.
Doctor, check him. Is it true?
Yes, his heart rate is wildly erratic. Celestia, man, you are a walking time bomb! That's what me doctor told me. It's been bothering me for years. But the doc said it was doubtful I lived till the end of the week. And tomorrow was Thursday. So I killed him, you see. Let me go back. About 5 years ago, me wife and me father-in-law were killed. Me father-in-law done some deals with the mafia of Baltimore. He couldn't repay his debts. Me wife was staying at his home while I was away. When I came back, there had been raids and all but 2 of the mafia ended up in jail. The love of me life was dead. I couldn't let that go. That Stinger and Black Spade had killed them, but they managed to escape prison because of a lack of evidence, and they was the only ones to elude justice. I couldn't have that. So I followed them, all the way to Canterlot, and I got a job as a cabbie. Every day I would wade through assignments, trying to find the perfect way to kidnap him and bring him to justice myself. Last week, my doctor told me I had 1 week, so I threw caution to the wind. That same night, I followed Black Spade from alehouse to alehouse. Then I drove up to offer him a ride. He was tipsy, and the dark hid me face. Last week, I'd driven Mare round a row of houses in Luna Gardens. She dropped a key, and I made a copy before turning it in. So I took him there, knowing out of a deserted street to do me business on.
Now, why did you make them choose between 2 pills?
Choose?
My goddess, you are a smart one. I'm no cold-blooded killer, sir. I let him in by knife point, but I wasn't to kill him. I wanted revenge, but I didn't have the strength to murder any pony. Not with my aneurysm. I always knew that I would create 2 pills. A harmless powder capsule and a poisonous capsule. Both identical. Then, sitting on the floor, I forced Black Spade to choose his capsule, and I would take the other. This way, you see, I know it'd been Faust's will that I have me revenge. He chose, and after he took his, I took mine. The panic caused my nose to bleed, but I was right. It was the goddess's will. Faust herself created right and wrong, so how could it not be her will? I've never been so overjoyed as the moment I saw his panic and fear as he fell back, gasping and trying to hang on to life. But he couldn't.
But the word roch, how could it not be a political crime? Surely you are a Germanian extremist. Why else would you write it?
In truth, I hadn't planned to. But as my nose bled, I remembered in Baltimore that a gang of Germanians who had been rivals with the mafia had written it above the bodies on a mafia crony. I thought it would be an additional salt in the wound if I got back to Baltimore Penitentiary that the Germanians had won. Also, it would throw you off, Inspector.
So that explains the blood everywhere, and the word on the wall. But what about the ring?
Oh, best part. He couldn't remember me. So I pulled out my wife's ring and showed it to him, and immediately he knew death had come for him. But I dropped the ring when I meant to replace it in my pocket. I couldn't leave it. I'd have sooner died than lose me Penny's ring. So I came back to the house, but a constable was already walking down the road. Quickly I turned and pulled out the bottle of cider I had with me to take the edge off the pain in my chest, and dumped it down my shirt, hoping he would smell the alcohol and think I was just a poor drunk.
It worked.
If Officer Bagstand had only taken him in.
But there's more. You tracked down Earth Stinger.
Yes, in the same way. He'd read about Black Spade's murder in the paper and went out to get drunk. He made it so simple for me. I picked him up like before, but I had to take him back to his home, which was on the other side of town. The cobblestones on his street caused me to break one of the tires, and it almost ruined my plan. I let him get to his door and then caught up to him with the knife. I allowed him to choose, as Black Spade had before him. No one can deny Faust herself chose his death. No pony's that lucky. Finally I returned home, but I found I'd lost my final set of pills.
Who were they for? A final victim?
Yeah, a final victim.
Yourself. Isn't that right, Mr. Seed?
Yeah. I was gonna see if it was divine providence's wish that I die of me aneurysm, or die the same horrific death I'd inflicted on them. It's only fair I'd be given the same choice.
Well, that is very honourable of you. I suppose as Faust's will is clear, as I dropped the bag, but carrying that back for 5 years, I never dropped it once.
Well, I think that's enough, don't you, Booksmart?
It's a clear enough statement.
If I die before my trial, I'm glad you heard me story, so I won't be remembered as some common killer.
It's a shame that you will not live to see your acquittal.
No jury would ever have convicted you for what you did. Not when they have heard this.
Come on, young man. I have to take you to the police station. We'll make sure you are comfortable.
Thank you, Mom. So ended our very first mystery together. Oakseed died that very night in his prison cell. According to Booksmart, he died with a smile on his face. I'd like to think he did. I'd once considered that maybe I was simply a hopeless romantic, and that the idea of his revenge had struck me in a soft spot. But seeing Holmes have the same reaction gave me hope that perhaps it is the feeling of compassion most ponies would have after hearing his tale. That day, after hearing of his death, Holmes and I sat at the dining table, eating our lunch, when he suddenly spoke, bringing me out of my thoughts.
So, how did you enjoy your little study?
My study?
Yes, your study of the scarlet thread of murder running through the skein of life, and our duty to unravel it, and isolate it, and expose every inch of it.
I found it highly illuminating. In fact, I wish I could learn more about your methods, Mr. Holmes.
You can if you want to.
You mean I can accompany you on other cases?
I read a dissertation by Princess Celestia recently, in which she claimed the pursuit of friendship is the noblest pursuit. She said that all knowledge and pursuit of goodness was only possible through friendship. I've never had many friends, but I think you understand me.
I would love to be your friend, Holmes.
Well, thank you, my dear Trotson.
That is the story of how I began a lifelong study in the mystery, crime, and murder at the hands of my teacher, my best friend, and the wisest stallion I have ever known, Shercolt Holmes.